Hey everyone, welcome back to Reading with Tatiana. Today I'm doing my book review on Instructions for Dancing by Nicola Yoon, and it was a quick and easy, uplifting, hopeful read, and I gave it overall a 4 out of 5. As always, before I get into my review, I would appreciate it if you can hit the subscribe button. If you like what you can see, also hit a thumbs up. And if you have read this book, Instructions for Dancing, I would love to hear your comments and your reviews down below. If you have any feedback for my channel, I will also appreciate it as I'm a new booktuber, so I'm always open for feedback. Before I get into my review, I always like to start by giving a bit of background and info about the author. So the author for today's book is Nicola Yoon. She is Jamaican American and her husband is Korean American. I believe his name is Daniel. That's why her last name is Yoon. And so when I actually picked the book, I actually thought she was an Asian American author. So it was actually kind of neat to see that she's Jamaican American and her husband is Korean American. And the reason why I bring up their ethnicity is because when her daughter was born, her daughter is obviously biracial, being Jamaican and Korean, and she felt she wanted to write stories where her daughter could feel represented. So actually, her first book was called Everything, Everything, and it took her 3 years to write, and it was for her daughter. So I haven't read that book yet, but I believe the protagonist is someone who was 17 years old. So I thought that was pretty neat that she became an author with that in mind, to so that her daughter could feel more represented. And I really find that really speaks to me because growing up when I was reading books, if the book didn't clearly say the ethnicity or the upbringing of the book, I would very commonly relate to that character as myself. And they say that like race doesn't really matter, but sometimes just saying what the character looks like kind of makes you kind of like, I guess, identify with the character a bit more. So in this book, for example, Instructions for Dancing, Nicola goes into details describing each character and how to look like, regardless of race. And it's kind of cool because it gives you a picture, and also like it kind of be like, hey, like I can relate to that person, either like the texture of their hair or maybe their height or their style. So I thought that was pretty neat. So back to Nicola Yoon. So she was actually went to school at Cornell for electrical engineering, but she did an elective in creative writing. And since finishing her degree at Cornell, she actually went back and got or she went back to school at a different school to get a master's in creative writing. But it sounded like for majority of her professional career in the beginning, she actually was a programmer at an investment management firm. And she only took up writing later, or maybe like casually, and then she published her book when she was actually 43, which is pretty impressive. So I have a picture of her up here, but she's 50 and like she looks quite young. So I felt that was pretty awesome that, it shows that you don't peak in your 20s. So much can happen. Like now I feel with a long life to live, a lot of people live up to 80 or 90, and like, you can try new things and they can become your passion, or they can stay your passion, and your passion could become your career. You just never know. So I thought it was really cool that she didn't publish her first novel until she was 43. Her first novel is called Everything, Everything, and it actually became a major motion picture. And in her second novel, it's actually called, let me look it up, it's called The Sun Is Also a Star, and that also became a major motion picture. So I think that's kind of cool because I'm definitely a fan of reading books first, and then if there's a major movie picture, it's kind of cool to see how someone else read the book and how they made the book come to life. I mean, I guess it also depends how the director and producer had the author has say in it. So I thought that was pretty neat. Having said that, though, the movies do look kind of like cheesy romance, so I don't think they won any like Academy Awards. But I do want to say that Charlie Melton, or Melton, who played Reggie, or one of the Reggies in Riverdale, is one of the stars in Everything, Everything. So I thought that was pretty cool. So let's get into the story of the book, Instructions for Dancing. So the novel starts with Evie Thomas, who is our main protagonist, and she is in her senior year of high school. I believe it's still the first semester, and she finds out that her parents, or the story starts with, it's been months since her parents have decided to divorce and separate, and she's living with her mom and her sister. And because of her parents' divorce, she's actually quite sour about love and marriage and what's the point. And a cherry on top is she actually comes across her father cheating with his current new girlfriend. His and she lets her mom know that she saw it, and she's just so like sour about love and how like what's the point of it if it's just going to be in pain, because she really had the idea that her parents' marriage was perfect, and it just all came crumbling down when she found her parents divorced. As fate would have it, though, she comes across like a free library, the ones that you see built in communities, like a little wooden box. And in the little like free library, she finds a manual which is called Instructions for Dancing, which is the title of the book, obviously. And I personally find it really funny in movies and books when the title of the said movie or book is actually in the piece of art. So I thought that was kind of funny that was in it like at the beginning. So in the instructions manual, it has instructions for dancing, and there is a return address on it to a dance studio. So, and then at this point, there's basically two plot lines that are happening. So the first plot line is as soon as she discovers the instructions for manual dancing, she starts getting vision. So basically, whenever she sees a couple kiss, she will get taken back to when that couple first met, some moments for the relationship, and then she'll see the inevitable end of the relationship. So in her life, she sees all these couples, and when they kiss, it'll be the start, some moments in between, and the end. And it always ends in heartbreak, like a breakup or cheating or maybe death or whatever. And this just like instills in Evie that what's the point of falling in love, because you're just gonna get hurt. It's so out of your control. It's inevitable. So she's like, this is the worst vision ever. I hate it. She can't be happy for anyone. She has two friends that start dating, and she sees their breakup, and she's like, what's the point of this? So that's the first thing that happens when she finds the instructions for dancing manual. The second thing that happens is her friend says that she should return the instructions manual to the dance studio address in the book. So she brings it to a dance studio, and at this dance studio, she, through a strange twist of events, I guess, she gets roped into go into a dance competition. She has no dance experience, and basically she gets partnered up with X, which is short for Xavier. And you know, this is a romance novel, so you can kind of guess that something happens between them. And X is a very positive, uplifting, like yes man, and you kind of wonder like, will he change Evie's point of view on love? So that's the two things that start happening in the novel. So I already mentioned two of the main characters, which is Evie. She's a senior in high school, and she's a bitter soul about love, and there's no point. There's also X, or Xavier, who is she meets at the dance studio and actually is the grandson of the owners of the dance studio. And he's this positive yes man. He just moved to LA from like out east, and he's in the rock band, so he's just very opposite of Evie. Other side characters are Evie's friends, which is Cassidy, Sophie, and Martin. And they're just kind of her soundboard through the novel. Don't want to do any spoilers, but they're kind of like, yeah, a soundboard for her when there's any issues and that kind of stuff, and to really show like her community around her, because they go back all the way back to middle school when they were friends. Other big characters is her mom and sister, because even though her sister and her both experienced their parents' divorce, her sister still believes in love. Her sister still dates a lot. Her sister is supportive of her mom dating again. Whereas Evie is like, Mom, why would you date again? Like, it's just gonna end in heartbreak. And Evie's like, Mom, like, how can you be friends with Dad? Like, she just doesn't understand. So I think the sister is important to see that despite having a shared experience, they're reacting very differently to it. The mom is obviously an important character as well, because the mom is very supportive of Evie maintaining a relationship with her father despite the divorce, and Evie finds that really hard to believe. And then Evie's dad is also in the novel as well quite a bit, and I think he's important because he kind of shares about his point of view of the divorce and separation, and I think when he shares it, it's actually candidly to me painfully honest, and I'm very surprised that a young adult's novel will be so honest, but it's actually quite refreshing. So those are the main characters. Some other side characters in the novel that aren't huge but are, I guess, critical to a plot are Ix or Xavier's grandparents because they're the owners of the dance studio, and also, of course, Evie and Xavier's dance instructor Fifi, who is like this Eastern European stereotype. So this novel, I think you can kind of tell so far there what the common themes are. So the common one is obviously the idea of love. I thought some interesting questions that the book raised when I was going through it was really when Evie struggled with her parents' divorce and seeing those visions of every relationship that she sees basically always ends, whether it be heartbreak or death. So I think this book, the common theme is love, and it asks the questions: is it worth loving even if you know it's going to end? Is it better to have love and loss than have never loved at all? And also, just because a relationship or marriage is over, does that mean that the time together wasn't worth it? Or maybe were the memories, or is it a waste of your time? So it raises all these questions. I think if you've been in a relationship, or maybe if you've been hurt with liking someone and someone not liking you back, it kind of has all those questions, which I thought was really cool. Other common theme in the novel was, at least for me, it felt really personal to my experience growing up because my parents also had separated when I was like pretty young, like 7 to 9 years old range, was the how divorce affects teenagers. So, you know, as I said earlier, her parents got separated. There was actually an affair as well from her father. And it shows how it affects Evie and also her sister very differently. And also, you know, with Evie's case, it really questioned what love meant to be. And I think, like, for a lot of people who go through a parent's divorce, like, we're kind of raised with your parents are a perfect match and have this amazing love story. And I think when you find out your parents divorce, it's kind of like this idea that you've been fed from very young age and also reaffirmed by movies and fairy tales and stories. It comes crumbling down when your parents divorce. But you know, as you get older, like for me, I found at a very young age, my parents are just two people doing the best that they can. And just because they failed in their marriage doesn't mean that they fail being people. It doesn't mean they fail being a parent to me. So I think the book really talks about that because your parents are more than just your mom and dad. Other common theme I found in this book is, and maybe because it is a young adult's book, I don't know if I would have picked it up when I was a young person reading it. But now that I'm like older, I'm like 33 this year, I find that more observant of these things. So I think a common theme is a lot of times during the novel, it's a lot of Evie reacting to the situation, and she's very self-centered, thinking about her needs and her wants. And I feel like the book, when you scale back on a bigger picture, I think it really talks about how life isn't about you, and sometimes it's about self-sacrificing for the benefit of others. And even if you're not happy about something and you don't want to do it, sometimes it's worth it to swallow your pride and your ego and put it aside and just show up for people around you. So I thought that was a really great theme as well in the book. I'll start with things I didn't like in the book. So I only have one critique for this book, but it makes sense why I have this critique, and it makes sense why it happened this way. So as I said, it is a young adult fiction romance book. So one of my biggest critique was I felt it was really unbelievable how Evie and X just met and how quickly they had chemistry. It just didn't seem really realistic to me. But I guess, like, you know, if you think about how a novel only has so many pages, it has to come together quickly. So I felt that was kind of unbelievable, and also felt the chemistry was a bit forced. But you know what? That's a young adult fiction, and it's a book, so it's fine. So there were three distinct things that I liked about the book. So the first thing was there were actually some twists in the book that I didn't see coming at all, which is so great because I mentioned earlier that I picked this book because I knew it was going to be a light, easy read, especially after reading All the Light We Cannot See, which is the book I reviewed previously. If you want to check my link below, I'll link it. So when I read this book, I just thought it'd be like a nice, easy, predictable read. And sometimes you just want that. You want just everything to go right. So this book definitely had a few twists I didn't expect. So definitely worth reading. A second thing I like was I felt like there was lots of pinnacle or pivotal characters in Evie's life, like, you know, her dance instructor, her mom, her sister, were characters, not just like the role of being a sister, mom, or instructor, but also the lessons they taught her and the way that they communicate with her, I felt like it was very reflective of experiences that I had growing up. Like maybe I had an aunt that was like her mom, or I had like a friend that was like her instructor. So I felt Nicola did a really good job having characters that I think were that are very common with people who grew up in a North American setting, and it felt very like coming of age story as we're growing up and trying to navigate what it's like to be a teenager, entering adulthood, and also learning new things that's outside of her comfort zone. And like, I felt I really enjoyed that part of it. And then the third thing I really like about this book, as it's a young adult fiction, I think it's very important to start young and have diversity and inclusion be effortless. Because I do feel like I'm entering my mid 30s, and I feel like diversity and inclusion wasn't a given when I was growing up. And as I get older, it's very forced because we want to include everyone. But I definitely see with the younger generation, when I see my nieces and stuff, I can see that it's not even a second thought. It's just the minimum, you know what I mean? So I really appreciate that this book had a lot of diversity from all races to be included. And also, like, there was a huge variety of sexual orientation. And now that I'm saying that word out loud, sexual orientation, I feel like that's a dated term. So if you're a younger person and you know what is the current term for sexual orientation, let me know, because I feel like I haven't heard that term in a while. It sounds outdated, but you know what I mean? Like, just someone having preference if they're gay or straight or bisexual or queer. So I thought that was represented very well in this novel. So 2 reasons why I think you should read this book. I think if you're someone that has gotten sick of love, have gotten a little bitter about love, then you should read this book, because I think it will give you a new perspective and give you a bit of hope. And it's just, I don't know, for me, like, I'm not bitter about love, but I felt like this book, because Evie's character was very bitter about love, it was cool to see her turn it around. The second reason why I think you should read this book is basically, if you're not a fan of love and you are a fan of love, then you should also read this book, because it's a feel-good book. It gives you hope again, and so I feel this book, like, anyone could read it, and there's something for everyone. I actually really like the offer page of this book, because it says that Nicola Yoon, she's a hopeless romantic who firmly believes that you can fall in love in an instant and that can last forever. So I just love that message, and I love love. So if you love love, if you don't love love, read this book. There's something for you. I also think that you should read this book if you know someone that have parents that separated, just to read Evie and her sister's experience and reaction to it. Because having read this book and having gone through a divorce myself as a kid, I felt that it was nice to read about someone's experiences, and it also validated a lot of feelings or reactions I had when I was a kid, because I felt when I was growing up that a lot of people in my school had parents that didn't divorce, so I felt very lonely in that experience. So if you know someone young who has parents that are going through divorce or having a tough time, this book might be worth sharing with them. As always, we're getting to the point of the video where I like to share one word that this book made me feel, just because, as you guys know, I've read lots of books now, and I feel if you ask me a year or 10 years about this book, Instructions for Dancing, I probably can't tell you Evie and X's name. I probably can't tell you all the plot twists and all the plot points, but I can at least tell you how the book made me feel. So this book, Instructions for Dancing, beautiful cover page, right? I actually read that Nicola Yoon's husband designs some of her illustrations for her novel. I couldn't find if he designed this one, but if he did, that's great. I love the teal and I love the pink with it. Anyways, so this book, the one word it made me feel hopeful. So why I'm using the word hopeful is because the book starts with Evie just feeling so bitter about love and all that kind of stuff. And throughout the book, she just becomes hopeful, and she finds like little moments of happiness in her life. One scene in the book that I really like, and I won't give any spoilers, is there's a scene where she's surrounded by her friends and they're just having a really good time. It's their semester year in high school and they're just enjoying life. And Evie, or I guess Nicola, the author, wrote a line that said something along the lines of, you're just kind of like, when that happens to you, like, you're just kind of like living in the moment, and you kind of just look at everyone around you, and not only are you happy, but you're just so happy that you're able to be a witness to this. Because, these moments don't last forever. We'll go through hardships in our life. And sometimes it's just so important to be present. And it's such a gift to be able to see people close to you be so happy as well. So this book makes me hopeful. So this is the end of my review for Instructions for Dancing by Nicola Yoon. If you have read this book, leave some comments down below on what you think and what you thought about my review. If you haven't read the book, let me know if you're going to add it to your TBR or to be read. I think it's a quick, easy book, so if you have a few days or a few hours to spare, totally worth blasting through it. So before I end the video, I'm going to introduce the next book that I started. So this book is, I think, like not necessarily a direct sequel, but it's kind of like happens a few years, or I think 10 years after Hunger Games. So I read Hunger Games when it first came out in like 2012 or 2011, so it's been like 10 years now, which is crazy to think about. And I love that book. So I wasn't sure if this book would be like, too young for me, or I haven't reread the Hunger Games in years since it came out. So I'm like, oh, like is it worth me reading? But Suzanne Collins wrote a follow-up, and I'm about 3 chapters in, and I would say that you probably do need to read the Hunger Games, but you don't need to reread it or remember it, because in the first 2 chapters they do a good job explaining the context of the world. So this will be my next book. It's quite hefty, so it'll probably take me a bit to read. But if you want to join in, please do, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.